There's a few interesting trends in gaming over the past few years. Every game seems to feel the need to yoink gameplay mechanics from Dark Souls. Games release as nearly unplayable, only to be patched up in the coming months after everyone's moved on. And the live service model seems to be sinking its stupid teeth into every single game. Hey guys, genius idea. What if Halo had a Fortnite battle pass? Wouldn't that be poggers, as the kids say? But despite all of this, I'm still generally positive on the games industry as a whole. There's been some fantastic releases over the past few years, and there's a bunch on the horizon that I'm really excited for. But with all that in mind, there's one trend that I just can't wrap my head around. Fake sequels. In recent years, we've seen some of the world's foremost developers release games that are boldly marketed and branded as sequels that, at the same exact time, possess none of the qualities you'd normally see in a sequel. I mean, think of what it means to be a video game sequel. If you look back on video game history, which is something we should all remember from our middle school classes, sequels have paved the way for innovation that excites time and time again. I mean, Super Mario Bros. Was a worldwide hit that revolutionized gaming forever. So people were rightfully excited when Super Mario Bros. 2 released, and they weren't let down. Nintendo added 3 new playable characters, a whole new world, a new story, new gameplay mechanics, and increased the level complexity to leave you entertained for hours. Now, jump forward 15 years to the release of Halo. Another pivotal, genre-defining game, this time changing the way we play shooters forever. And excuse my profanity here, but how the frick do you follow up such a genre-defining release? Against all odds, Bungie found a way, releasing Halo 2 with vastly improved graphics, new mechanics, characters, worlds, and an entirely new story. It was a massive success, and it cemented Halo as an IP that would be a household name for decades to come. And now let's jump forward another 15 years to the release of Overwatch. Wait a minute, that means Halo's as close to Mario as it is to Overwatch. Oh god. Overwatch also released as a massive success, proving once and for all that Blizzard was capable of making games that weren't just fantasy RPGs. It had sharp, well-tuned gameplay mechanics, a lovable cast of characters to play as, and it perfectly meshed inspiration from games like Team Fortress 2 and Dota to create a first-person shooter unlike anything we had ever seen before. And backing the game, giving it substance, was a carefully constructed collection of lore and story that made the entire game feel alive. There were warring factions, spies, and scientists, and overall just a whole lot of powerful origin stories. It really gave the game depth. Now, way back in the day, I remember listening to podcasts before the game released, detailing the lore and speculating on the game mechanics. I remember pre-ordering the game like a naughty little gamer and waiting on the release page for the timer to get to 0. And I remember hopping into the game and having all my expectations not only met, but exceeded. I loved Overwatch to death. I really doubt any of you guys remember me from these days, but Meraki actually used to be an Overwatch tips and tricks channel. And while I eventually moved on to other games and eventually felt the soft touch of grass against my skin, Overwatch always had a place in my heart, and I look back on it fondly. So when I started hearing tell of an Overwatch 2 that was going to be coming out, I got really excited. I tried to avoid learning too much about it so I wouldn't get my hopes too high, but I was elated to learn about all the new characters, play the new maps, and experience where the story would go in a second game. But then Overwatch 2 released, and it felt oddly identical. There were 2 new characters, but almost everyone was playing the same characters that I had known for years. There were a few new maps, but most of the maps were the same as the old game. Oh, but wait, there was a whole new PvE mode and a whole new story and a whole new way to play the game. Oh, it's not out yet, and there's still no release date. But hey, at least they added a fucking battle pass. And it's no surprise that people were universally disappointed with Overwatch 2's release. You can't take a game that is so beloved, promise to be releasing a full-blown sequel, and release a glorified update with more aggressive microtransactions. And looking at how the player count spiked and then sharply died off, I think it's safe to say that Blizzard messed up somewhere, despite the game being in a better state from a gameplay perspective than it has been in years. But now I want to look at another game that's making the same move. And before I get into it, I want to clarify that I am really excited for Counter-Strike 2, and it's absolutely rekindled my love for Counter-Strike, which, like Overwatch, was a game that I absolutely loved back in the day and still holds a place in my heart. Like Overwatch, it is a game that Meraki used to be focused on. And even though I'm pretty clearly not a CS expert, I'm pretty well in tune with the community sentiment, and I think all of the changes, especially graphically, are extremely exciting and will be a great improvement to the game. Sure, there are some things I'm worried about, like the movement, but I think CS fans are in for a massive treat. And what's more, Counter-Strike 2 is going to be free. I just don't think it's a sequel. And I know it can be easy to sit there and call this a debate of semantics, but really, I think it's just a bad PR move on behalf of these companies. They know that calling the game a sequel will generate more buzz because it feels entirely new, but they also have to know in their heart that they're not truly sequels. I mean, look at Half-Life 1 versus Half-Life 2. Look at Diablo 1 versus Diablo 2. These studios know how to develop a game that is a true sequel. And while it's difficult to compare these single-player games to these competitive esports titles, there's a reason that despite how massive and game-changing the updates, League of Legends has been called the same exact thing for the past 13 years. Now there's an argument to be made that they're calling the game Counter-Strike 2 because it's based on the Source 2 engine, but come on guys, you have to be able to see how that's just taking advantage of happenstance. That's right, I'm calling it happenstance to market the game as a sequel. I mean, maybe draw the emphasis away from the number and just call it Counter-Strike Source. Wait, shoot. But the main reason I'm really worried about this direction is because we've already seen how it can absolutely destroy real innovation in a genre. I mean, just look at sports games. They release a glorified update every year just to stoke player counts and gatekeep roster changes. It's become a world where there is a mandatory $60 charge every single year, or you're left playing with the old, outdated version. And these games truly change next to nothing, just slight incremental changes to animations and graphics that are in no way deserving of calling themselves a whole new game. I mean, go on the street and ask anyone. Madden peaked with Madden 08 and it has been downhill ever since. But they can get away with it because they own the rights to these massive sports leagues, because EA is a spreadsheet-driven, money-seeking publisher, and because, say it with me guys, people who play sports games are dumb. Now, it's not a perfect comparison, I'll admit that, but seeing how it's hurt sports games has me really worried it'll seep into the games that are actually good. You know, the ones with violence and wizards. Of course, Counter-Strike and Overwatch don't charge for their sequels, but you can't deny that they're going to be making tons of money off the marketing. And at the end of the day, that's my whole issue with these fake sequels. They're nothing more than a marketing trick, and it feels like a scummy move for companies that are actually doing amazing developmental work on these beloved games. I will stand here and openly say that these sequels are better than the originals. They improved the graphics and the gameplay greatly, they rekindled the player base, and they kept interest in the games high. But I also refuse to admit that they're sequels, and marketing and branding them as that is just going to result in communities getting way too hyped for games that don't change enough. So what is my stupid solution? Don't put a 2 after the name. Literally just call the game something like Overwatch Evolved or Counter-Strike Pog Edition. If it's not a sequel, don't market it like it's a sequel, and you won't face an angry mob when you release your very good game update. Because regardless of the scale of the update and the manpower required to shift a game onto a different engine and perhaps build it from the ground up, it's just not a sequel. The key metric in a game being a sequel is having a continuation of the story. If we were getting games with new maps, entirely new gameplay mechanics, and enough innovation to reasonably say it's an entirely new game, sure, throw a number 2 after it, even though it's like the 6th or 7th game in the series. But don't release an update as a new game, unless you're ready for fans to be let down. Treat these amazing IPs with the respect that they deserve, and don't lie or deceive to the loyal fans that have kept you afloat for years. And speaking of loyal fans, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hit the bell, press the buttons, and until next time, when I release as Meraki 2, bye-bye.